Morning guys. In this video I'm going to be running you through the topographic mapping slides. What this slide goes through is a little bit more than the contour lines, the common contour shapes and the bolts basic mapping that we've done. We're now getting to the point where we can nearly look at everything that comes on a map. The last thing that we're really going to look at here is grid referencing and area referencing. You had a little bit of a go at that in the last PowerPoint, but only in the real basic form in terms of battleships, giving me a letter and a number. That just gave us an idea of whether you get the general idea of area references and grid references. In this presentation, we're going to go through a little bit more depth in the way that we do grid referencing. So what I want you to do at the moment is open a new Word document, call it Topographic Mapping Questions. Because as we go through the PowerPoint, you're going to see some questions pop up along the way. It's really important that you pause the video when I tell you to pause the video and write the answer to those questions in those Word documents, because that will really give you an idea of whether you're understanding or whether you've missed the concept. If you're finding a question really difficult and you don't know what to do, just re-watch a little bit of the video, and if it doesn't tweak that, send your teacher a message on Teams and just note the question that you're doing and what you're finding difficult. Just like maths, it's really important that you don't move forward until you're fully understanding the questions before it, because topographic mapping, what we're looking at today with grid referencing, builds on old knowledge. And if you don't have that old knowledge, you're not going to understand it. It's very important that you've done all of the tasks up to this point, and that at every point where you run into issues, you stop and you message your teacher. Doesn't matter if you're sending us 20 messages, that's what we want. At the end of the PowerPoint, I want you to upload the finished Word document and all of the worksheets that I'm going to ask you to do into the Learning Task 5 Topographic Maps. At the moment, all of the worksheets are in a PDF file, which doesn't work for you at home in trying to edit them. So I'm going to try and make Word versions of them today. It's just a little bit fiddly and the formatting might be off. So I'll upload them as I've got them done. Remember, with your answers, I want you to write in full sentences wherever you can, and I want you to give me depth, description, and detail. I don't want you trying to power through this and giving me 3 words for an answer, because I can't pass you for that. Those questions are there to flag whether or not you're understanding, and I'm going to be looking for the depth in your answers. So, topographic maps, they have a little bit more on them than just contour lines. So as well as showing the height and shape of the land through the contour lines, they also show other features that are around. They might show forests, lakes, cities, roads, buildings. Everything that you possibly could put on an area map goes into topographic maps. But they can look really complex and confusing, which is why we've built this up over time and added layers over time. So these are examples of topographic maps, and they're actually probably the ones that you're most familiar with seeing. I want you to pause the video here, and I want you to answer both of these questions. Now, you don't know anything about topographic maps yet, so this is all brainstorm type things. Pause the video now, answer those questions, full sentences in your Word document. Alright, I'm going to assume that you've done those questions. If not, pause it and do them. Now, this is a really basic form of a topographic map. We can see, I need to put my highlighter on. We can see up here that we have numbers running along the top of the page and running down the page. This is kind of familiar to you if you are thinking of battleships, but we use these in a very specific way. So maps sometimes use letters and numbers to give coordinates. You know this, we've kind of looked at that. Usually the letters will run down the bottom of the map and the numbers will run up the side. But topographic mappings only have numbers because they allow more combinations. And they use the terms eastings, which is in the direction of this blue arrow, so all of the numbers running in that direction. And they use the term northings, all of the numbers running in that direction. The easiest way to remember which is which, guys, is that eastings increase as they travel to the east. Northings increase as they travel to the north. Eastings, northings. Oops, I'm highlighting. To give coordinates or grid referencing for these maps, we use 4 and 6 figure grid references, and I'm going to explain what they are. 4-figure coordinates refer to an entire grid, so an entire box. They're a little bit more broad than 6-figure coordinates, which refer to a very specific spot within a box. So grid references, a very specific spot in the box. Area references give an entire area, an entire box. And you'll use one of the two depending on what you're trying to highlight to the reader of a map. Sometimes you want to highlight an entire area, so you'll use an area reference, which is a 4-figure number to show an entire box. Sometimes you want to focus on a very specific spot, like the peak of Mount Cuvier there, and you'll use a 6-figure grid reference to really emphasize that spot. When we use 4-figure grid references, we must read the eastings, the ones that increase as they travel to the east, before the northings, the ones that increase as they travel to the north. The way that I remember this, guys, is E comes before N in the alphabet, so eastings come before northings when we write them down. Eastings first, northings second. E before N in the alphabet. So, what we start working out, if I want to know the 4-figure grid reference or the area reference for Mount Cuvier, I want to give the reference for that entire box. I give the easting first. If I look up here, we're in the 19 box, so my easting is 19. Then I give the northing, and I come up here, we're in the 46 box. So my area reference becomes 1946. The way that you can really work out whether this box is 19 or whether this box is 20, I use an ownership term, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. What I want you to do at the moment is pause. I want you to try to answer these questions in your book, and I'm going to give you the answer in a second, so it's really important that you pause it now and don't skip ahead. Try question 4 and question 5. I'm now about to give you the answer. Coal Hill, if we find that on the map, is down here. If I want to look at the 4-figure grid reference, I have to remember I do the easting first because E is first in the alphabet, and I do the northing second. So for Coal Hill, if I'm giving an area reference or a 4-figure reference, I look at my easting first, which is 19, and then I look at my northing, which is 45. So my area reference or 4-figure grid reference for Coal Hill is 1945. For question 5, we need to look at Lake Petrarch. Now this goes over a few different boxes. So there are a few different 4-figure references or area references that I could use. If I wanted to give the area reference that had the most of the lake in it, I would look at this box. Remember, I look at my easting first because E comes before N in the alphabet, and my easting for that box is 23. My northing for that box is 44. So my area reference or 4-figure reference for that section of Lake Petrarch would be 2344. The other two boxes that we could really give are this box here and this box here. The references for this box, remember the easting comes first, is 23. The northing comes second, is 43. So our FourFigure reference, or our area reference for this box, is 23, 43. And for this one, with the same idea, it's 24, 43. When we look at SixFigure grid references, we go into more detail than our FourFigure references. What we're trying to do is find a very specific spot within a box rather than referring to the whole box itself, which is what we do in FourFigure area references. So the first thing we want to do is find a grid where we've got a point of interest. And I've chosen this one, and my point of interest is the peak of Mount Cuvier, that little dot right there. I'm going to try and find the grid reference, so the very specific reference that will take my eyes to that spot. What I do, the easiest way that this makes sense to me is to think in terms of rulers. We need to add an extra number into our reference. And I look at this like I'm looking at a ruler where I've got centimeters on each of these lines, and then we divide it into little millimeters. So we could have a 0 on that 18 line, 18, 0, 1, 2, 3, oh, my highlighter's not on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 19, 0. So I actually divide it like I've got a ruler in front of me and like I'm adding in millimeters to this line. 19, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is about halfway. 6, 7, 8, 9, 20, 0. 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 0, 9, 2, 1, 0. 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 2, 0. So we add in those extra millimeters. If I was to draw a grid over it, this is what it would kind of look like. But you don't need to do a grid each time. It's not going to matter if you're 1 or 2 lines off because I'm not expecting you to draw a grid, but that's kind of what we do. So if I wanted to find the very specific point where Mount Cuvier is, I need to add in an extra digit to my references. So our area reference to get the entire box of Mount Cuvier is easting first, 19, northing second, 46. 1946 would be my FourFigure reference. To give a SixFigure reference, I need to add the extra digit in here, which I've highlighted red. I need to add the extra digit to make it a SixFigure reference rather than a FourFigure. So what I do, thinking that this has got millimeters across it, I count in 19, 0, 19, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20. I think the peak of Mount Cuvier is about 2 notches in. So I would write down 19, 2, which is what I've put here. Box 19, 2 notches in. So now I need to look at my northing. And my northing starts here. 46, 0, 46, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, halfway, 6, 7, 8, 9, 47, 0. So when I count it up, I reckon that the peak of Mount Cuvier is 46, 8. 46, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right there. So my northing becomes 46, 8. So what I can do with this, I can know that I'm looking for a specific spot within a grid, and this helps me find it. If I'm trying to find the very peak of Mount Cuvier, and I know that my grid reference is 192,468, I know my eastings always come first, so I find my 19, and then I count in 2 notches. 1, 2. And then we're looking down this line here. To find my northing, I know that the box I'm looking for is 46, which is here, and I know that I'm 8 notches up. 46, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can line those 2 points up to find Mount Cuvier. So what we're going to look at here are some common mistakes that you can make when doing grid references and area references, just from watching what people have done over the last couple of years. We know what sort of grid reference we're looking at by putting a couple of letters in front of the numbers. It flags it really, really quickly for people. In front of a four-figure reference or an area reference, we need to put an AR, and that shows, the AR shows that we've got an area reference coming up, which will be 4 numbers. We put a GR in front of a grid reference, which is a 6-figure reference, to show that we're doing a very specific spot. We're doing a grid reference. So an AR goes in front of every 4-figure reference for an area reference. A GR goes in front of every 6-figure reference, grid referencing. The next common mistake is people putting the wrong number down for their grid. So for example, we know that our easting for Mount Cuvier is 19. We know that our northing is 46. What we see a lot of people doing is putting in something like 20, 47, which would be this box here. When I think about which number is appropriate, I think in terms of ownership. We know our northings run up the page. We know our eastings run to the right of our page. So as soon as I hit that 46, 46, 0, my 46 owns this grid until I get to 47. Our northing is running up the page. Our 46 owns everything to the north of that line. Our 47 owns everything to the north of that line. With our eastings, our 18 owns everything to the east of that line. Our 19 takes ownership at that line, and it owns it to the east until it gets to the next line. So sometimes you'll see that we might actually want to pick a reference up here, but we don't actually have a number to show what it is. This number is an 18, which is what a lot of people would put down to start with. We know that each of these lines is increasing by 1, and we know that 18 owns that line at 18, 0, and everything until we get to 19, 0. So the one that must own this box is 17. 17 would own everything from this line to the east until we got to 18, 0. So if it helps, think of those numbers in terms of ownership. It starts at 46, 0. The moment we see that line, our new number owns that box, 46, 0, until we go north to the next number, which starts ownership on that line. You might find your own way that makes a bit more sense than that, but that's what works for me. That'll stop you being off with your area references and grid references by 1 number. It sucks, but if you're off by 1 number, you've got it wrong. You need to be really specific and know which number owns which box. Alright, I've now got a couple of worksheets that I want you to do. At the end of each worksheet, flick your teacher through a message on Microsoft Teams and ask them to give you a little bit of feedback. I'd hate for you to do all 4, submit all 4, and found that you'd missed a concept. They're currently in PDF files, which doesn't help for you working at home. I'm about to start transferring them into Word documents, which is a little bit fiddly, and I need to kind of make them from scratch. If they're not up by the time you get to this point, I just want you to, as best you can, do your answers on paper. Print the sheets out if you've got a printer at home. If you've got a PDF editor, perfect, right on top of the PDF. If you're really stuck, you can paste it into something like a PowerPoint slide and then do arrows over it and writing to the right, whatever works until those Word documents are ready. Where they are, they're uploaded into the Activity 5 learning task in the Resources folder. So you go to your Resources in your Humanities folder, your Mapping Unit, your Activity 5 folder, and you'll see them all there. I want you to do the FourFigure reference sheets before the SixFigure reference sheets. You'll notice that they're called Activity 4, they're called FourFigure Grid Reference Worksheet, and then it might be second FourFigure Grid Reference Sheet. Then there'll be a SixFigure reference sheet, then there might be second SixFigure Grid Reference Sheet. It's a little bit of use your initiative there to work out which to do first, making sure you're frequently asking for feedback on them. I need them submitted back into the learning task section. So in Activity 5 learning task, I'd like you to submit your completed worksheets. Like I said before, you can print them out, write on them, scan them, take a photo of your finished work, upload it however you want. I'm working on making them Word documents to make them easier for you to edit. When submitted, we'll mark them, we'll give you feedback. Don't worry if you struggle, it can be a really confusing concept. You just got to give your work the best go. I'll send you some feedback, your teacher will send some feedback, rewatch the sections of the video where you're stuck, and just keep messaging through Teams until it clicks, because it might take a little bit before it really clicks, and that's okay. It's a complicated concept.